It was October 30th last year, the day before Halloween. I work as an accountant in a downtown office, and that Friday, I didn't get home until around 9 p.m. My shift ran late because of last-minute reports, and by the time I pulled into our driveway, I was exhausted. My son, Henry, who's 7, had been begging me all week to get him a costume for trick-or-treating. He wanted to be a pirate this year, nothing fancy, just a simple outfit with a hat and a plastic sword. My husband, Eddie, was home watching him, but Eddie had to work the next morning, so I figured I'd take Henry out quickly to the big box store a few miles away. It was better than waiting until the last minute and everything being sold out. The fog was really bad that night. Living in the suburbs of Ashwood, we're used to misty evenings, but this was thick, like you could barely see 20 feet ahead. The streetlights looked like blurry halos, and driving felt eerie, even with Henry chattering in the back seat about how many candies he'd get. We got to the store around 9:30, a 24-hour Walmart, still open but not crowded. The Halloween section was picked over, but we found a pirate costume in his size for about $15. Henry was thrilled, trying on the hat right there in the aisle. I paid at the self-checkout, grabbed the bag, and we headed to the parking lot. The lot was mostly empty, just a few cars scattered under the sodium lamps. Henry was holding my hand, swinging the bag as we walked to our SUV. That's when I heard it, footsteps behind us, crunching on the gravel at the edge of the pavement. Not loud, but deliberate, like someone matching our pace. I glanced back but couldn't see much through the fog. Maybe another shopper, I thought. But the steps got closer, faster. My heart started pounding. I picked up speed, pulling Henry along. "Come on, buddy, let's get home." As we reached the car, the footsteps were right there, maybe 10 feet away. I spun around, and out of the mist came a figure, a tall man in dark clothes and a Halloween mask. It was a cheap rubber one, like a zombie with rotting skin and fake blood. He wasn't running, but he was coming straight at us, arms out like he meant business. No words, just advancing. Henry froze, and I yanked him toward the car door. "Get in now!" I shouted, fumbling for my keys. I hit the unlock button, shoved Henry into the back seat, and jumped into the driver's side. I slammed the door and locked it just as the man reached the window. He banged on the glass with his fist, hard, like he was testing it. Henry started crying. "Mommy, who's that?" I yelled through the window, "Back off, I'm calling the cops!" But he didn't stop. He pulled something from his pocket, a rock or a tool, I couldn't tell, and smashed it against the glass. Crack! The window spiderwebbed on the first hit. I jammed the key into the ignition, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. The engine roared to life, and I threw the car into reverse, peeling out. He jumped back as I swung around, and I sped toward the exit, glancing in the rear view. He was just standing there, the mask staring blankly. My mind raced. Was it a prank? Some idiot in a costume trying to scare people? It didn't feel like that. He was too focused, too aggressive. I called Eddie on the way home, my voice trembling as I told him what happened. "Just get here safe," he said. "I'll be waiting outside." Henry was quiet in the back, hugging his costume bag like a shield. We made it home in about 10 minutes. Our house is a small 2-story in a quiet neighborhood, nothing special. Eddie met us at the door, hugged us both, and checked the car window. It was damaged but not shattered. He said we'd get it fixed tomorrow. We tried to calm down, put Henry to bed with his new costume laid out. Eddie and I sat up talking about it. He thought it was a random creep, maybe high. We locked all the doors and windows, turned on the porch light, and went to sleep around midnight. I woke to a crash at about 3 a.m., glass shattering, loud and sharp, from downstairs. My eyes snapped open, and I sat up in bed. Eddie was already awake, grabbing his hunting rifle from the closet. We keep it unloaded usually, but he loaded it quickly that night. "Stay here," he said, but I followed, grabbing my phone. The house was dark, just the hallway nightlight on. We crept down the stairs and saw it. The living room window smashed in, shards all over the carpet, cold air rushing through the hole. Outside in our front yard, standing in the fog under the streetlight, was the same man. Same mask, same dark clothes, just staring at the house like he was waiting. Eddie flipped on the lights and yelled, "Get the hell off our property!" He racked the rifle, the sound echoing, and pointed it through the broken window. "Don't move, I've got a gun." The man froze, hands up slightly. I was dialing 911, telling the operator, "There's an intruder at our house. He broke the window. My husband's armed." Henry woke up crying upstairs, but I told him to stay in his room. The man didn't run. He just stood there, like he was sizing us up. Eddie kept the rifle on him, repeating, "Don't you dare move." It felt like forever, but the police showed up in about 5 minutes. 2 cruisers, lights flashing through the fog. The officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting at the man to get on the ground. He complied slowly, no resistance. They cuffed him, dragged him to the car. One cop came inside to take our statements. Eddie explained the parking lot incident and the window. I described the mask. Outside, we heard them remove the mask. I peeked through the door and saw him under the cruiser lights. It was John Harland, Eddie's old coworker from the construction firm. They'd worked together for years until John got fired 6 months back for showing up drunk too many times. Eddie's face went white. "John? What the?" John didn't say anything, just glared as they shoved him into the back seat. The cops later said John had been obsessed, watching me for months, showing up at my office parking lot, following me home unnoticed. Eddie remembered John asking about me at work, making creepy comments like, "Your wife's got that nice smile." We never thought it was this bad. He'd lost his job, his apartment, and was fixated on me as some fantasy. The mask he bought that day, probably planning to scare me or worse during the Halloween chaos. They charged him with stalking, attempted breaking, and vandalism. He's in jail now, with a restraining order against him. We fixed the window and got a security system with cameras. Henry still went trick-or-treating the next night, but I walked with him every step, scanning the crowds. Halloween in the city always turns into a bit of chaos for a few minutes. For just one night, the rules seem to change. Kids can make all the noise they want, and it's totally normal for them to be creeping around in creepy costumes. I try to enjoy it even though I'm 29 and live in this old craftsman duplex. Normally, my front porch is a peaceful spot, but tonight, it's basically a candy station. The real rush usually kicks in around 8:30 p.m., and then it goes quiet. You can see the transition from adorable little kids to teenagers. And some of those teens can be a real pain. They're not interested in free candy. They want to scare you, or maybe even egg your house. I had just finished giving out my last bowl of mini chocolate bars when 3 teenagers showed up. It was pretty clear they weren't in any clever costumes, just generic Halloween masks. One had a faded Joker mask, another wore a melted skull mask, and the last one had a plain, emotionless white mask that honestly gave me the creeps. They didn't walk up to the porch. Instead, they just stood on the sidewalk, completely silent. I called out, "Last call for candy," trying to sound cheerful since I was running low. The teenager in the white mask didn't budge, but he tilted his head slightly like he was sizing me up, and it felt more serious than bored. You 3 need to head home. It's getting late." I tucked my empty candy bowl under my arm and reached for the door. That's when I heard a loud pop from down the street, and the Joker mask guy started laughing. This tight, forced sound. As I stepped inside and closed the door, I made eye contact with the one in the white mask one last time. There was nothing friendly about their stare, especially as they focused on my living room window. It sent chills down my spine. Once inside, I put the candy bowl back on its usual shelf and double-checked the deadbolt. It felt a bit silly, but it made me feel better. I kept telling myself those 3 were just kids trying to be tough, and the masks gave them a false sense of bravery, not necessarily malice. By 11 p.m., the streets were empty and quiet. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counter when I heard a noise that definitely wasn't the wind. It was a loud scraping sound coming from the side yard near the narrow path that leads to my back door. My side yard is totally hidden from the street by this huge rhododendron bush. I froze, sponge in hand, when I heard the scraping again, and it was even louder this time. It sounded like metal scraping against concrete. Maybe it was just my imagination, or perhaps a raccoon dragging something, but raccoons don't usually move so deliberately. I set the sponge down and crept to the back door window, pulling back the curtain to take a peek. The backyard was dark and full of shadows. I had installed a motion sensor light by the back door, but it was still pretty dim. Whatever was out there was clearly avoiding the light. My heart started to race. This wasn't just a rowdy crowd or drunk teens. It felt like something else entirely. I quickly grabbed my phone and opened the security app I had previously mocked for installing. I pressed the button to lock everything down. I checked the windows facing the side yard. Locked. I checked the basement entry. Locked. My hands were shaking too much to send a text to someone, so I opened to quick dial on 911 and was ready to call them if I needed to. I figured I'd be too exposed in the kitchen, so I needed to head upstairs where I could keep an eye on the front door. I was about halfway up the stairs when I heard the unmistakable sound of a door opening. I hissed under my breath. It was the back door. Even though it was supposed to be locked via the security app, the lock was pretty cheap, and I really needed to fix it since it always seemed to give way. That meant whatever or whoever was in my house now. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze, squeezing my eyes shut to listen over the pounding of my heart. I could hear the floorboards creaking softly under their weight as they moved slowly and cautiously through the house, heading toward the stairs where I was. I caught the faint, stale smell of cheap polyurethane mixed with body odor. Definitely a Halloween costume. I probably had about 5 seconds or less before they spotted me standing on the stairs, silhouetted by the light from the front window. My mind went completely blank. Survival instinct kicked in. Instead of running up, I darted down into the dark hallway beneath the stairs, pressing myself against the wall and sinking into the deep shadow cast by my coat rack. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs, maybe 10 feet away from me. I gripped my phone, my thumb hovering over the call button for 911, but I needed to see who it was first to get a good description. The person started up the stairs, moving slowly and deliberately. They were heavy, and the wood groaned under their weight with each step. They probably thought I was hiding in one of the bedrooms. That was my chance. As soon as their head cleared the upper landing and their silhouette disappeared, I lunged out of the darkness and sprinted toward the kitchen. I didn't dare look back. Every part of me screamed, knowing they were just seconds behind me. I didn't grab the knives. I went straight for the utility drawer, digging through old batteries and rubber bands until I found it. My heavy-duty tactical flashlight. This thing didn't just light up a room, it was solid metal and heavy enough to pack a punch. That's when it hit me. I couldn't just bolt out the front door. The monster in my house would definitely hear the deadbolt unlocking, but I knew they'd check the master bedroom first. So I had to make some noise where they weren't. I slammed the back door shut, the one they just broke in through, and threw on the flimsy latch. Not a lock, just a latch. "I'm calling the police," I yelled at the top of my lungs, my voice cracking, hoping they'd hear me upstairs. I could hear their frantic footsteps retreating on the floorboards above. They weren't coming back down. They were probably looking for another way out, maybe a window, trying to escape before help arrived. I didn't waste any time. I hit the call button and told the operator someone had broken into my house through the back door. They assured me the police were on their way and told me to hide. So I ducked into the darkest corner of the kitchen near the pantry, waiting with the heavy flashlight, feeling solid in my grip. The intruder was moving fast now. I heard a crash upstairs. Maybe they tried to open a window and realized it was locked. A moment later, their hurried footsteps pounded down the main stairs. They reached the bottom, heading straight for the back door, thinking I was still hiding or hadn't really called the police. As they stepped into the kitchen, their backs half turned toward me, I made my move. I didn't say a word. I swung the flashlight low and hard, aiming for the back of their knee. The sound was sickening, a crack followed by a grunt filled with pain and surprise. They dropped like a rock, a heavy weight on the floor. Their white masks slipped, revealing dark stubble and a wide, terrified eye underneath. This wasn't the Joker or some melting skull. I remembered those teenagers, one of them wearing the same mask, but this wasn't a kid, it was a grown man. He struggled to push himself up, dragging his injured leg. That's when I swung again, this time aiming for his shoulder before he could roll over. The flashlight connected and he groaned, collapsing onto the cool tile. I didn't approach him. I stood about 10 feet away, panting, adrenaline coursing through me, shining the flashlight directly at him. "Stay there," I ordered. Exhaustion hit me hard, making my legs feel like jelly. Through the ringing in my ears, I finally heard it. The beautiful sound of sirens in the distance. Red and blue lights began to flash through the front window. He tried to whisper something, maybe a plea or a threat. I couldn't tell. Honestly, I didn't care. I didn't move until the front door burst open with the sound of boots and urgent voices. "Police, put your hands up." I dropped the flashlight with a clatter onto the tile and slowly raised my hands. "He's in the kitchen. He's hurt. He broke in." The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, stern voices, and the overwhelming smell of antiseptic and fear. They pulled him out, cuffing him and dragging him away. The police found a cheap lock-picking kit near the damaged back door. He wasn't a monster. He was just a predator who picked a night of chaos to commit a crime, thinking he could get away with it. And get this, he turned out to be the father of one of those teenagers who'd been lurking around my house. That's why he had the same white mask his son wore. He borrowed it when his son came home. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in bruised purples and grays, my house was empty again. The police tape was gone. The only reminders of that night were the damaged door jamb and the ache in my shoulder from the impact. I sat on my front porch sipping cold water and watching the neighborhood wake up completely unaware. They'd be out sweeping up candy wrappers soon. I was safe. I was alive. I didn't let panic take over. I faced the darkness in my hallway and came out on top. But one thing was for sure. I'd never look at a cheap plastic mask the same way again. And next Halloween, I wouldn't be handing out candy. I was 10 years old on Halloween in 2018, living in a quiet part of Bristol, UK, near St. George's Park. Our street, lined with terrace houses and neatly trimmed hedges, felt safe enough for kids to roam freely. My parents were preoccupied with my little sister, who was battling a bad cold that kept her bedridden. They decided to let me trick-or-treat alone for the first time, a milestone I was thrilled about. "Stay on our road and maybe go up to Church Road," my mom instructed firmly. "Be back by 8:30, Leo," she added, her voice tinged with concern but trusting me to be responsible. I was over the moon, dressed as a zombie with ripped jeans and fake blood I'd bought from the local pound shop. Swinging an old pillowcase for sweets, I felt like the king of the neighborhood, ready for adventure. The night started with a buzz of excitement. Street lamps cast an orange glow, creating a festive atmosphere as kids darted around in colorful costumes. Laughter and shouts filled the air as groups of children ran from house to house, bags in hand. I hit a dozen houses in the first hour, my pillowcase growing heavy with dairy milks, Haribos, and other treats. By 8 p.m., though, the streets began to quiet down as younger kids headed home. I'd wandered a bit too far, ending up on a side street off Blacksworth Road, a place I didn't know well. It was darker here, with fewer Halloween decorations and an eerie stillness. Some houses looked empty, with cracked windows and overgrown gardens choked with weeds. I thought cutting through this street would get me home faster, so I pressed on, my sneakers crunching on the pavement. That's when I saw her. An old woman, maybe in her 70s, stood on the porch of a rundown Victorian house that looked abandoned. Faded paint peeled from the walls, and ivy crawled up the sides like skeletal fingers. No lights shone except for a dim, flickering bulb on her porch, casting long shadows. She waved at me, holding a tray of what looked like homemade biscuits, her hand trembling slightly. "Come here, love. Got some treats just for you," she called, her voice wobbly but warm, like a kindly grandmother. She seemed harmless, like someone's grand baking for the neighborhood kids, so I shrugged and walked up the creaky wooden steps. My bag wasn't full yet, and I was peckish after hours of walking. Her appearance was striking up close. She had wispy white hair tied back messily in a loose bun, strands escaping like cobwebs. Her faded floral dress hung loosely on her frail frame, smelling faintly of mothballs. Her eyes were unnaturally bright, almost wild, glinting in the dim light with an unsettling intensity. "I'm Mrs. Carver. What's your name, dear?" "You look just like my grandson, Tommy," she said, her voice soft but insistent. I told her my name was Leo, trying to be polite as I took a biscuit from the tray. It tasted off, like too much flour and not enough sugar, but I munched it anyway to avoid seeming rude. She smiled, her lips thin and trembling, watching me eat with those piercing eyes. Then she said, "Come inside for a sec, love. Got more sweets in the kitchen and it's chilly out." I knew I shouldn't go into a stranger's house, but she seemed so frail and kind, and I was eager for more treats. Against my better judgment, I followed her through the creaky front door. The house stank of damp wood, mildew, and old papers, a heavy smell that clung to the air. The front room was cluttered with stacks of yellowed Bristol Post newspapers, their edges curling with age. Peeling wallpaper hung in strips, revealing moldy plaster beneath, and a single bare bulb flickered overhead. There were no Halloween decorations, no festive cheer, just chaos and neglect. She led me through a narrow hallway to the kitchen, chatting nonstop about how kids don't visit anymore. "Tommy loved my stories," she kept saying, her voice growing distant as if lost in memory. In the kitchen, she pointed to a dusty glass jar filled with wrapped sweets on a cluttered counter. I grabbed a handful, stuffing them into my pocket, eager to leave the oppressive atmosphere. But when I turned to go, she stepped in front of the door, her small frame suddenly imposing. "You can't go yet, Tommy. It's not safe," she said, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. My stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a stone. "I'm not Tommy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "I need to get home." But her smile widened, her glassy eyes gleaming with a manic intensity. "Oh, Tommy, you've been gone too long. Nanny's here now," she crooned, her words dripping with delusion. Before I could react, she locked the door with a loud final click that echoed in the quiet house. I backed up, my sneakers scuffing against the warped floorboards, looking for another way out. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, her bony fingers like iron digging into my skin. "Let's play a game," she said, her tone cheerful but terrifyingly wrong. I shouted for help, my voice cracking with fear, but the windows were boarded up, their edges sealed tight. The house was set back from the road, too far for anyone to hear me. She pulled me toward a narrow door in the kitchen, her grip unrelenting as I struggled. The door led to a cellar, and she dragged me down the rickety stairs into darkness. The cellar was cold and damp, smelling of earth and decay, with a bare bulb swinging overhead. Its weak light revealed a small camp bed in the corner, covered with a threadbare blanket. Old toys, broken dolls, and rusted cars were scattered across the floor, covered in dust. A heavy chain was bolted to the wall, its links rusted but sturdy. "This is your room, Tommy. You'll stay until you remember," she said, her voice calm but unhinged. She forced me onto the bed and clamped the chain around my ankle, the rusty metal pinching my skin. I cried and begged, tears streaming down my face, but she just hummed an old tune, oblivious to my pleas. "I'll fetch your tea soon," she said, as if chaining a child in her cellar was perfectly normal. She left me there, the door creaking shut behind her, plunging the cellar into near darkness. Days blurred together in that freezing, damp prison. She brought me tinned soup and dry bread, the food barely enough to keep me going. Between her visits, she rambled about her real grandson, Tommy, who had died in a car crash years ago. From her disjointed stories, I pieced together that she suffered from untreated mental health issues, possibly schizophrenia. Her family had abandoned her long ago, leaving her alone in this decaying house with her delusions. Sometimes she'd forget to unchain me, muttering to herself upstairs as I tugged at the rusty links. The cellar was alive with the scratching of mice in the walls, their tiny claws a constant reminder of my isolation. I'd hear cars passing on Blacksworth Road, their engines faint and teasingly close. I tried to shout, but my voice was too weak, muffled by the thick walls and boarded windows. My phone, dead in my pocket, was useless, and she'd taken my pillowcase of sweets. I lost track of time, my body growing weak and dizzy from hunger and fear. I estimated it was maybe 3 days, though it felt like an eternity in that cold, dark hole. My zombie costume, once a source of pride, was now tattered and smeared with dirt. I clung to thoughts of my parents, hoping they were looking for me, but despair crept in. Then one morning, a loud banging shook the house. "Police, open up!" A voice bellowed from above, authoritative and urgent. Mrs. Nye. Carver panicked upstairs, her footsteps frantic as she screamed, "They're coming for you, Tommy!" Her voice was shrill, laced with paranoia, as if the police were after her imagined grandson. Boots thudded down the cellar stairs, and the door burst open, torchlights blinding me. Officers flooded the room, their radios crackling as they assessed the scene. They found me on the camp bed, the chain still locked around my ankle, my body trembling. Paramedics rushed in, their faces kind but focused, cutting the chain with a loud snap and wrapping me in a warm blanket. My parents had reported me missing that first night when I didn't come home by 8:30. A neighbor had seen me heading toward Blacksworth Road, a small detail that guided the police. They'd been checking derelict houses in the area after rumors about Mad Mrs. Carver, a local recluse known for talking to ghosts. The officers arrested her as she rambled incoherently, still calling me Tommy. Later, I learned she was diagnosed with severe mental illness, including delusions and hoarding tendencies. They said she genuinely believed I was her grandson, lost to her years ago. The house was condemned, its cluttered rooms and chained cellar a testament to her broken mind. I was reunited with my parents, their faces pale with relief and tears as they hugged me. Physically, I was okay, though weak and shaken, with nightmares that lingered for months. I'm older now, but I still wake up some nights hearing her voice, that wobbly tone calling me Tommy. Halloween, once a night of fun and freedom, is now a reminder of those dark days. I stay home every October 31st, my door locked tight, the porch light off. No amount of candy is worth stepping into that darkness again.